Hey everyone! Before we open today's file, please make sure to follow us on Instagram at d.s.radio, where you can find all the images that go along with today's case. You can drop us an email at contact.dsradio@gmail.com. You can find all of our socials in the Linktree bio on our Instagram profile, including links to merch. If you're feeling especially generous, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/dystopian simulation radio, where you can get access to our exclusive Instagram page and make suggestions for upcoming episode topics that you would like us to cover. Speaking of Patreon, thanks to our Patreons, Riff Cult, Cropley Crab, Cash Broadus, Raspberry Jr., Jason R. Nelson, Creepy Paper, Jamie Sook, Michael Laughlin, Lindsay Keller, Mike Wright, Greer Weaver, Kelsey Carruthers, Linz Gibbon, Drake Holvig, Only Child, Michael M, Wesley Akers, Riaz K, Emily Medeiros, Pip, Heather Wynn, Graves, Devon Sweatshirt, The Ordained Sinister Minister, and Philip Hoffman. Hi everyone, and welcome to Dystopian Simulation Radio. I'm your host, Linz.
And I'm your other host today, Michael 8.
Ooh, I bet that was a shock to everybody who was expecting. And I'm your other host, Chris.
Your imitation of him sounded so sad. And I'm Chris. I'm Eeyore.
I don't know why I picture him like an Eeyore character in my head for some reason. I think it's because he has a deeper voice and I can't do his voice. So that's like the closest I can get. How are you doing, Michael?
I'm doing really good. I'm doing a mix of really good and a little stressed because I've got this really cool opportunity. And I'm not sure how many details I can give about it yet. I kind of just pretend every project I'm involved with is like a Marvel movie. So I'll err on the side of caution.
All right, well, I'm happy for your opportunity, not so happy for your stress. And also, you're very sleepy, and I'm very excited and like kind of loopy again.
That's right. I'm so excited to have Loopy Linz.
Honestly, I feel like so dumb. And when I do episodes like this, when I listen back to them, I'm always really paranoid that I'm going to be like, blah, 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 but I kind of sound normal. So I'm just going to not panic and hope that everything's okay. So before we get into this, I just want to tell everyone that any visuals or videos or whatever that goes along with this episode will be on our Instagram at d.s.radio. There's a link tree in our bio that links you to everything you could possibly need, including our Patreon, etc. So head there for all of your DSR needs. But yeah, Michael, I don't know what you're going to tell me about today. I don't know what the story is. I don't know what the case is. But last time we did, it was the case of Stan Romanek, wasn't it?
That's right, yeah. Stan the man.
Stan the man. Oh, he really wasn't the man, to be honest. He was a literal sex offender who saw aliens that were actually just him in masks or something. Yeah, so kind of excited to see what you have for us today. Or am I? I'm worried and excited.
Well, I can tell you that in this episode there are no sex offenders, so I'm giving you my sex offender-free guarantee, which maybe I should provide.
One of the best guarantees out there.
But before I dive in, do you want me to tell you a little bit about what I'm excited about? Because I can give a little bit of details, and I am excited.
Well, yeah, you could
Okay.
have said that earlier.
I could have,
You were
but
like, I'm not going to share anything. And then after I've done all of the stuff, you're like, would you like some info? Like, yes.
okay. So in short, I got hired to do a film score for a paranormal documentary, and it's super exciting because I've always wanted to do film scores. Like since I was a kid, I remember, this is gonna sound funny, but the first CD I ever had was the Lion King soundtrack
I
from
love the Lion King soundtrack.
and I wouldn't listen to the songs in the film, like the cartoon songs, like the sing-alongs. I wouldn't really listen to those. I would always listen to the score. And so I knew about Hans Zimmer like when I was like 10. And
All right, Mr. Cool Music Guy.
but here's a funny thing is I was looking it up because as a kid I remember his name being Hans Zimmerman, and now it's Hans Zimmer. Do you remember that too?
Zimmerman?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Zimmerman.
Yeah, no, it's Hans Zimmer.
Did you find a Mandela effect?
I did. I looked it up. I was trying to find, because I swear I remember as a kid reading Zimmerman. And back then, I don't have a context for what type of names there are, really much of anything.
Yeah.
So I looked it up and I couldn't find anything except a Reddit thread of people being like, I swear it was Zimmerman. And I was like, no! Because
not again. There's got to be something that makes us think these things.
Oh, yeah.
But we're just not connecting the dots.
definitely. And it's just, it's hard because in general, I think the Mandela effect theory is kind of dumb. So it sucks.
Yeah,
to
me
be
too.
pulled
It's just
into
a
one.
bunch of people misremembering.
Yeah, it's mostly white people getting black people confused. That's the bulk of it.
What?
That wasn't Shaquille O'Neal.
Oh, okay.
That was Sinbad. That wasn't, that wasn't Nelson
Yeah,
Mandela.
it reminds me of somebody, my regular co-host with movie actors. Chris.
So in short, I'm excited about this opportunity, but I'm also stressed because I found out about it. Like I sat down and did the talks for it like in April. And I have to wait until the film is largely finished editing before I can start my part. And
when will that be?
I hope soon because it has a release date. So for me and my perspective, my window of time is just getting shorter and shorter to produce this like album's worth of material. So I'm very excited to do it.
Oh, you're doing the entire thing?
Yeah, the entire score.
Oh, is it Ancient Aliens?
It's not,
Boo.
but without giving any details away, if you are really into paranormal documentaries, you will have heard of this filmmaker that I'm working for. So I can't wait to officially announce it, but for now, that's a sneak peek. So
didn't you have a song in a horror movie recently as well?
I did, yeah. There's, I believe it's called House of Dolls, and it stars Dee Wallace, who is like one of the original Scream Queens. Most people would know her as the mom from E.T., but she was in Halloween and The Hills Have Eyes and Cujo and Critters. She's in the film, and I believe that one will be coming out this fall. And my my VHS Violent Horror Story song is in that film, so that's exciting.
I love that song, by the way. We'll play that at the end, actually, for those who haven't heard it yet.
Sweet deal.
Hell yeah. All right, Michael, I'm scared, but you have a case to present to us today. And yeah, take it away.
All right. This one's a wild ride, but in a very different way, in a good way.
Okay.
So we're going to talk about a man named Paul Benowitz. Paul, he was a self-made man. Even with no formal electronics training, he was a very successful electronics engineer. Founded a company called Thunder Scientific, and they design instruments for the Air Force and even NASA.
Ooh.
He's just all around considered to be a genius. So you can see why I was drawn to him. We just have so much in common.
Shut up.
But because of the work he did, Paul's house overlooked the Kirtland Air Force Base in New Mexico. And he could see it from his deck. And on many occasions, he was spotting unknown craft.
All right. I can kind of see where this is going, Michael.
All right. You picking up what I'm putting down. So one night, July 1979, Paul sees two lights raise up from the ground, shoot across the sky, and disappear behind a mountain nearby, which is called the Manzano Mountain. And this wouldn't be the last time he saw the lights. In fact, it became such a regular thing that he decided, as a scientist, he was going to start gathering as much data from them as possible. He wanted to find out what these were. So he was able to collect emissions data. He even was able to detect an unknown type of signal from them. And he concluded that they were of unknown technology. So with all this
unknown to him.
Yeah, right. So but he's pretty, like, he's working with NASA, he's working with the Air Force, right? So, and he's
true, yeah. So he'd be pretty up on technology.
Exactly, right? So with all this information, he decides he's going to go to the Air Force and tell them what he's seeing. So Paul's seeing UFOs. He collects all this data. He goes to the Air Force. How do you think the Air Force is going to respond to this?
Well, from the last alien case I did, I believe was the Domstein blobs. And when those two guys took their evidence to the military went, ha, 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 don't be stupid.
That's pretty par for the course, yeah. And even... So are you just saying Dumpstein blobs? Like, that's just, even the name is funny.
It is. It's so stupid. It's like a weird jelly candy or something.
I think the Air Force could be forgiven on that one. But typically...
Yeah, true. But I feel like the military... The Air Force would be like, even if it was a thing, they'd be like, don't be silly. Like if you're trying to keep a secret and someone guesses it and then you're like, no. Like, obviously you're going to play it off no matter,
right.
If it's silly, if it's realistic. So you don't want people to know. So you're just going to, brush it off and pretend it's no big deal, which is how I assume this went, maybe?
Right. Denial and ridicule seems to be, the policy, right? But maybe because of who, Paul was, they actually took him seriously.
Oh.
And very soon after contacting the Air Force, Paul was contacted by someone who we'll call Agent X. Or we could call him Deep Throat, or any other X-Files-y porn names. What do you think? What's a sexy undercover agent name?
I like Agent X because
Agent
it kind
X.
of sounds like napalm.
Okay.
Not that that's a good thing, but
So Agent X ends up confirming to Paul that the lights are in fact extraterrestrial.
Oh.
And not only that, he tells Paul that the government is in possession of alien craft and bodies.
Sorry to interrupt, but this is really not usually how it goes.
Right. And then even more baffling is, after confirming this to Paul, like, I don't know how the conversation went. Maybe, I'm sure they planned what they were going to reveal. It wasn't just like, oh, you got me, we got aliens too. But after telling Paul this, he tells him that he can't reveal this information to anybody. So they're basically bringing him into the fold, is what it sounds like.
Ah, okay. He's sinned too much.
Right. So Paul starts to collect video and audio signals from the craft. He gets footage of what appears to be a saucer-shaped object, apparently coming out of the mountain.
Michael,
what?
The Domstein blobs, the sausages. It's coming together. Okay, carry on. I'm with you.
I feel like I know what your favorite case is now, Linz.
The Swedish sausages, of course.
Didn't Chris describe Hulk Hogan as white hair on a hot dog skin or something?
Yes. I'm telling you, there's a common thread running through all of these DSR cases, and it's sausages.
I'm surprised you weren't like, it's the Dumpstein blobs, it's the sausages. It's a conspiracy. You're going to get contacted by Agent X.
Okay.
So he gets audio, video, saucer-shaped crafts are coming out of the mountain. So because of the abundance of information and evidence that he's collecting, Paul gets invited to the Air Force Base to present his research. And after presenting all his findings, a brigadier general was at the meeting, and he told Paul, quote, that he had some very convincing evidence. And so they even awarded him a grant to investigate these UFOs further.
Okay. So this is the LSD dolphins kind of operation where they're like, could be a thing. Here's some money. You go work it out by yourself and bring back the findings.
Basically. And this is not how things usually go. But as weird as this is, hang on, because it's going to get so much weirder.
Wait, what year was this again? Sorry?
This is in 79, I believe. Yeah.
Right. Okay. It's making sense with the decade, let's be honest. The 70s were a weird time for military or NASA funding weird shit. So
yeah, everyone was expanding their mind with psychedelics, including high-ranking officials. The brigadier general's just high as balls, being like, "Dude, you have to find the truth, man. We're all one. We're all one consciousness. You need to like make contact, bro."
honestly, you joke, but this seems to be what they were doing. Like the dolphins, they were like, maybe they can communicate with aliens. And this, he's like, sausages, bro.
So with the green light and resources provided by the Air Force, Paul goes to work. And it's not long before Paul begins to pick up and decode actual signals from the aliens themselves, with messages saying things like they come from a waterless planet. They're looking for a new home. You know, they're just sliding into his DMs like, hey, you up? We don't have any home or water, so we want to come over and get wet. You know, things like that.
Hey, baby, we thirsty. But seriously, like, what? Wait, how? I don't know if you will know this, but like, how is he decoding these signals into messages? Like,
I am not smart enough.
Were they like sound based?
Yeah, there was. So I'm not smart enough to describe the technology. It was some kind of audio technology. I don't know what kind of signal was decoded or what kind of what the raw information was.
Okay.
But that's kind of my understanding of it, is that there was a raw signal. He decoded it, and it actually was translatable into clear messages. So,
like, in his opinion.
Well, so in Paul's opinion, he makes special mention of the fact when he turns this over to the Air Force that he doesn't trust the signals he's getting. He believes that the aliens are communicating to him, but he doesn't believe what they're telling them. And he thinks that they're trying to make him look foolish. So...
Okay.
Right.
So he's already got some kind of suspicious idea towards the aliens. He's like, oh, they're sending me messages. Wait a minute. I don't believe you for a second.
So if all this is...
This sounds like a manic episode.
Okay, so if that's not enough, getting signals from aliens, like this is directly to his home, like he's working out of his home. If that's not enough, getting signals from aliens beamed into his home, shortly after that, Paul and his son both begin to notice that they're being monitored by men in black sitting in unmarked cars across the street from their house. Paul's son even contacts the Air Force base, asking him to leave his father alone. And the Air Force's response to that was, "It's not us."
They would say that, wouldn't they? Like, Michael, for a second, right? Just a general question. If you were a man in black, quote unquote, would you just, like, maybe not wear black if you were tailing people and surveying them? You know, just to kind of avoid the cliche. Maybe you could wear some, like a German tourist clothes and sit outside someone's house with a map. Like,
maybe some Hawaiian shirts. Those are the most unassuming.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. A Hawaiian shirt and like a half open, like an open beer, half drank. And then just a map, you know, like if you're a man in black, unless they're just that confident, you know, they want to intimidate.
I think it's an intimidation factor for sure.
Yeah, I guess. Okay, Men in Black, let's go.
So we got a tortured genius. We got the Air Force, the mysterious Agent X feeding Paul all this information about aliens. We got Men in Black. I know what you're thinking. We all love a good story, but can we just skip to the sex scenes already, right?
No, that's not what I was thinking at all.
100%. You were like, sausages. Well, there's no female characters yet, but if any show up, I promise we'll get a sex scene, okay? That's my other guarantee.
All right, cis male.
No sex offenders, just all consensual sex. Paul eventually determines that the UFOs have to be coming from somewhere other than Monsanto Mountain itself. His investigation led him to Archuleta Peak by Dulce, New Mexico, which, coincidentally or not, has long-held legends of strange lights, weird happenings from the indigenous peoples of the area. And Agent X also confirms to Paul that the aliens are being kept under the mountain.
Huh?
So Paul, being a pilot, flew over the area and actually got footage of an unknown base, and we'll dive a little bit more into that later. But Paul photographs a crashed saucer-shaped craft on top of the mountain. Agent X confirms to Paul that this is in fact an alien craft that was given to the humans, but was later, quote, shot out of the sky as some sort of lesson.
Oh.
I don't know what lesson that is. Is that like when a dad lends out the car to the kid and they stay up past curfew? So he shoots the car? I don't know.
Murders his children. He's like, that'll teach you.
So he gets photographs of all this stuff. But later on, Paul's place, of course, gets broken into and the photographs of the objects were stolen. Now, who do you think could have done that?
Why does this always happen? It would okay, so rationally, my mind goes to he's making it all up. There was no pictures and he quote unquote stole them. But if we are to believe his narrative, I'm going to say like the Men in Black took them so he couldn't prove to the world that UFOs are real.
Right. It's like, but that's what they want you to think.
Exactly. There's no right answer to this question. It's like the person telling the story is lying and everyone else is trying to cover it up. And that's normally how it goes. Will there ever be a day that someone gets these precious pictures, duct tapes them to their body, and never lets go of them?
Just smuggles them in their colon.
That's what I'm going to do.
So by the mid-'80s, Paul becomes convinced and terrified that the aliens are going to take over the Earth. He even comes up with plans on how to attack them where they're stationed. He begins writing letters to the media, congressmen, senators, even President Reagan, telling him what he knew. But the only replies he would receive would be saying that they're not interested in the UFO subject. So Paul finds himself in this weird place where, on the one hand, the Air Force and high-ranking military officials are not only cooperating with him, but they're funding his research. They're communicating openly with him while everyone else seems to just be brushing him off, treating him like a kook. So
A kook. Sorry, it's been a while since I heard that.
So by 1988, Paul's on edge. He's stressing out about the alien invasion. He's feeling helpless to do anything about it. Things get so bad that Paul's family bring him to a psychiatric facility to try and save his life. Paul would make claims that the aliens would enter his room at night and inject him with an unknown substance that would make him drive out into the desert and do things he couldn't remember. And amazingly, despite their skepticism, Paul's friends and family can see the injection marks on his arms.
No.
At this point, Agent X comes to visit him one last time, apparently, and he had this to say.
This is as far as you can go with this. This is a friend talking. I don't want to see you harmed. Paul, stop it. Listen to your son. Listen to your wife and end it. Get rid of the equipment, lock this stuff away, and go on with your life. Go back to your business and stop all of this. Wow, that was very dramatic and theatrical.
When you read it, I'm very sure that Mr. X is a grade school teacher. Stop it now, children, stop it.
You stop that, you naughty man. Go back to your normal life, you psychopath.
So at this point, what do you think is happening with Paul? Do you believe everything he says he saw? Do you think he's mentally ill? And if so, is Mr. X even real? Like, what do you think is happening?
Has anybody else seen Mr. X?
Do you want to know?
Oh, am I jumping the gun?
Do you really want to know the truth? No.
Oh,
Mr. X is in fact a real person.
Okay.
And his identity is public today.
Right, okay.
His name is Richard Doty, and he is who this episode is really about.
Oh my gosh, okay, right. So Mr. X is real. Okay, so there's a point.
The mysterious, sexy Mr. X. Now, I don't have a lot of photos to send you on this case because obviously all of them got stolen by the Men in Black, but I'm going to send you this one photo of Mr. X just so you can see and maybe just describe him to us.
Yes, please. Oh. Not shaming him, but it's not the sexy man in black kind of secret agent that I was expecting. This man looks like if an owl was granted the power to become a human.
Why is that every show I do is it's an owl person?
It's an owl person. Okay, so
you said the same thing about Stan Romanek. Was he was an owl too?
There's something about these people who are drawn to these cases that's very owl-like. Like
the owls are not what they seem.
They're not. Okay, so we have like this white guy. He's pretty old. He's got a little silver fox comb over going on. Round glasses. Okay, I didn't want to describe it like this, but a Hitler stash. It is. He's got blue eyes. He looks very... It looks like someone who's trying to dress as if they're a smart person, an intelligent person.
He kind of looks like a cast member of The Wind in the Willows. You know? He does.
See, I'm telling you, there's something a little bit animal about him. Not in a sexy way, in a sort of nerdy, like, fox, owl... I don't know. This mole. Okay, yeah, mole.
And he is a mole. Oh my god. Okay.
He's a mole. Okay. Yeah, he looks a bit like a mole/owl, and he's got a little blue pastel striped shirt on and a tie.
Would you like to learn more about Richard Doty?
Yes. And Doty is just like the perfect name for a man that looks like that.
Oh, Doty. Special Agent Richard Doty of the Air Force Office of Special Investigations, or OSI, is also commonly known as the Deceiver, as according to Rick Doty himself, his main task at OSI was to deliver misinformation relating to UFOs. Now, it's a little bit more complex than that, and we'll get into it more later, but for now, let's take a look at everything that happened with Paul, according to Rick Doty's testimony.
Okay.
So, according to Doty, Paul had accidentally stumbled upon some highly sensitive, top-secret technology, and because Paul already thought what he was seeing was UFO-related, he kept feeding into that narrative.
Gosh.
So let's hear in his own words.
The more he had contact with me and others within the intelligence community, the more he started analyzing the information. So we kind of planted the seed in Paul that what he was seeing, hearing, and collecting was UFOs. Paul was a World War II veteran. He's very patriotic, so immediately Paul became a cooperating source, and he held everything that he had in secrecy. That's so mean. Don't you think?
It is mean, isn't it?
That's so mean.
That's like...
That is really mean. It's like, oh, that Delulu guy, let's just let him run with that and we'll just pretend. That'll keep him out the way.
I'm glad you feel the same, because that's my impression of the whole thing. It was like, this is mean, guys.
That's so mean. Like, what a bunch of dicks.
It's like when you're a kid and your brother gives you a glass of apple juice, but it's not apple juice. It's like, you're just spreading a misinformation, guys.
Ew!
So according to Richard Doty, nothing Paul saw was actually related to UFOs at all. All the lights were top secret craft. That military base that Paul saw was actually a secret military base, but it was actually for training commandos, not for working with aliens. The crash saucer shaped craft that Paul spotted and photographed was a secret military craft they were testing that had crashed, but now because Paul found it, they had to include it in the UFO cover story.
This is too much for one man, honestly.
It's like a big sitcom, you know? I kind of want to see a movie about this that's like in the comedy genre, if it wasn't so sad.
Yes! Like a burn after reading thing, you know, when she gets his novel. His
right.
like autobiography or his memoir, whatever it is.
Or the Men Who Stare at Goats is another good one.
Yes, I haven't watched that yet, but I want to.
So, and okay, here's where things get stranger. You know the photos that Paul took, the ones that were stolen?
Mm-hmm.
Guess who they were stolen by? Not the Air Force. They were stolen by the NSA.
What?
The object was later explained to be what we know today to be remote-controlled death drones, but back in 1985, those were classified, right? So they stole the photographs. And then not only that, those men in black who were watching Paul in the unmarked cars, the one that Richard Doty said wasn't the Air Force, they were NSA too.
This is way too much.
This is
like for
didn't
just
I
a
tell
guy
you?
who said he saw things.
Didn't I tell you that this episode was very convoluted and that there's like 3 different layers?
Yes, a guy said he saw some
It
things.
took me so long to put this together. And then the cherry on top, the alien signals that Paul decoded were sent by the NSA too. Yeah, so since Paul was becoming a security threat, they wanted to give him what he was looking for so that they could distract him from what they didn't want him to find. So they were the ones that were actually beaming messages into Paul's antenna set from across the street, which brings us back to Paul being suspicious of them. He thought they were aliens, but he thought the information was bullshit. So, credit to Paul for kind of at least being aware of that.
Yeah, like actually he's kind of a legend. But the worst part is that his family actually took him for psychological help. Oh my gosh, this must have like fucked him up so bad.
Right, and it did.
Because he was like right about everything. And then they were like, no, you're insane.
Exactly.
Because what you want about aliens. But actually, it wasn't aliens, but it was an agency pretending to be aliens. Which is, oh my God, it's so mean.
It's so mean. So the NSA, they believe if Paul could uncover what he did, then it was possible for other people to. So they opted into the Air Force UFO story that Richard Doty was putting forth. They replaced Paul's computer with a decoy that was filled with software that would decode the messages he was getting to fit the UFO narrative. So they planted all this stuff.
This is just actually blowing my mind because now it makes you think every person that has claimed to communicate with UFOs and like will die with that, will take that to the grave. Maybe they were communicating with someone or some agency. Oh my gosh, this is like really screwing up my brain about every case we ever looked at.
You bring up a very good point. And we're going to dive more into that possibility later. But there's even more. It gets the lengths that they went to to do this were unreal. So Richard Doty took Paul up in a helicopter one time. And the Air Force had set up specific props on top of a mountain to stage a UFO crash, just to confirm Paul's suspicions.
No, is this legit?
Yes, this is all confirmed by Richard Doty, who is now retired, and apparently has been given clearance to talk about this. But this is all declassified information now.
Okay, what the hell? Okay. Sorry, carry on.
It gets weirder and weirder. And this is what I mean by the several layers. But Richard Doty and Paul Benowitz even camped out on the mountains one time. And they themselves saw some mysterious things during their time there. And I will send you another clip to read so we can hear in Richard Doty's words what happened.
We actually saw some things and it startled me, which were fully explained later, but one of the things of interest was lights coming out of the ground. But the way they were coming out of the ground, in a pulsing manner, made it look like they were saucers flying out of the mountain. And I actually saw this, and I was somewhat concerned that maybe Paul stumbled onto something. So even he's confused.
Right. And so this is where it starts to get really weird. And I feel like the deeper we go into it, the more confusing it gets, because it's not clearly one thing or the other. And I'll point out a little bit later, some of these details that Richard Doty's talking about don't match up.
Oh, so could there be like this whole fabrication story going on, as well as potentially an actual UFO storyline playing out alongside? Like, what is this?
That's a good question. Like, okay, so when it comes to Paul Benowitz, does it actually make sense that the Air Force, the military, NSA, OSI, and members of the government would go through such trouble to throw one man off track? A man who was, as they said, very patriotic, cooperative. He even volunteered all the info he had to them first. Does it make sense that they would stage props, surveil him, break into his house, replace his computers, send signals, on, when they could have just asked him to stop? Or were they using Paul for a much larger disinformation campaign?
I feel like like you said earlier, if he figured it out, others could figure it out. So they had to have this sort of storyline in place. But also, like, Now this Paul guy is getting confused. And he doesn't know, like, what's a prop. Now even Dodie is getting confused. And he's not sure, like,
Dodie.
what is a prop and what is things that he doesn't understand. This is so weird. It just feels like, I feel like I'm getting, like, an existential crisis right now. Because, like, did you ever hear about that reality TV show where one guy thinks he's going into, like, a reality TV show, but everyone else in the show is an actor?
Yes.
And he's the only contestant. Yeah, it's kind of reminding me of that. And then I get, like, an existential crisis where I'm like...
Yeah, there's a few like that, actually. And it's very Truman Show-esque. Like,
yes.
Paul Benowitz is the only player in this whole story that has no idea what's really going on.
Yeah, he doesn't know. And it's actually making me feel uncomfortable. Because, like, we could all just be him.
Right? And there's many people who would argue that we are all just in our own little bubble of media-fed information, and, you know, our own beliefs factor into that as well. But something I didn't mention about Paul before was he was already a member of APRO, which is the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization, which is, I'm sure many people know, a UFO investigation group like MUFON or NICAP.
Yeah.
And even though he was, you know, a good Boy Scout and not going public with what he learned, he still talked privately with his friends within the organization. So this information that they were feeding him was getting out there in the UFO community. And many people, including myself, think that that was most likely by design.
Yeah. If they didn't want information to come out in drips here and there, they would have just eliminated him.
Right. Or again, they could have just been like, you stumbled upon some top secret stuff. Don't disclose what you've learned. You know, and then he would have, you know, like they said, he's very patriotic. He's very cooperative. It would have been simple just to say that. And I think he would have just... I don't even think he would have talked about that, but, like, how do you keep a lid on aliens? Right?
How do you keep a lid on aliens? That's such a Michael quote.
It's not like they're mason jars, guys. They're aliens. The lid don't fit. So Paul Benowitz was not the only target from Richard Doty. Richard Doty's first target was actually a man named William Moore, who, coincidentally or not, was the co-author of the first book about Roswell, titled The Roswell Incident.
Oh.
Now, this timeline is a little fuzzy, but the Roswell Incident was first published in 1980, and I believe Doty was working for OSI in the late 70s, so it's entirely possible that a lot of the information in the book was planted by Doty, but I couldn't exactly confirm this. But I think it's pretty likely.
Oh my gosh. This is going, like, deep.
Mm-hmm. Going so deep. Deep throat. But...
Stop it!
So in Doty's words, he was given the assignment to find out what Moore knew about UFOs and who he was in contact with. According to Doty, Moore did not trust him at first and was very reluctant to share what he knew with a known government agent. But he was, quote, trained with techniques on how to earn a person's trust and employed those techniques on Moore, and they worked. The agreement was that Doty would provide Moore with secret information on UFOs if Moore could provide Doty with information on the UFO community, who was investigating what theories were floating around, what the general zeitgeist was within the community. Now, Moore got in real deep with this. In fact, he later admitted publicly to being a part of a series of break-ins of Paul Benowitz's house and other psychological warfare operations.
Evil!
Right? So it's like the deal with the devil. They're like, we will give you all the secrets, but you have to feed, like, he was compromising the entire UFO community.
But can't anyone just join the UFO community and say stuff? Like, does
Right, well, on that note, William Moore was actually paying off higher-ups at APRO to send him UFO reports as they came in.
Uh-huh.
And they did so, not knowing that he was sending them directly to Richard Doty.
Oh.
So it gets really convoluted here. It's all espionage, you know? It's crazy.
I just feel like it's too much. And that if you, like you said, if you had just told him to, like, shut the fuck up, he probably would have. But, like,
Right.
obviously they want something. Or do they think that these UFO kind of enthusiasts know something that they don't?
Well, it does seem to suggest that they want to know what they know because or else they
Yeah.
wouldn't be getting someone to collect this information.
I guess it
So,
wasn't accessible, like as accessible back then as it is now.
right now everything's online, so they can just read
Yeah, exactly.
everything. But yeah, Richard Doty would go to UFO conferences, like not in disguise. He would just go there and he would listen in, he would meet with people, and I guess it was known that he was an agent, like a government agent of some kind, but I don't know how much was known about him. Like definitely not what is known today. But, you know, so there was this kind of air of uneasiness around him. But again, Richard Doty apparently is trained in these psychological techniques to get the truth out of people and get people to kind of to disarm them and reveal what they know. So
that implies that there is something to know.
Right.
Which is very interesting.
So another target of Richard Doty was a very famous name, Linda Moulton Howe. For anyone who doesn't know who Linda Howe is, she's an award-winning investigative journalist. She's the one who first broke the story on cattle mutilations. And basically, she spent the majority of her career doing work in the paranormal field ever since then. So at this point, she just released her Emmy award-winning documentary, A Strange Harvest, and was set to do a new UFO documentary for HBO called UFOs, the ET Factor. And according to Doty, his job was to find out what she knew, what she intended to include in the documentary, and determine whether or not it was info they wanted made public. So he approaches her and he tells her he has the names and contacts of all these UFO witnesses, and he's willing to give them to her to help with her research. So she agrees to meet with him, and he takes her to a, quote, special room.
Oh, no.
He tells her it's a commander's office, and it's not.
It's a janitor's closet.
She expects to collect the names and numbers, as was promised, but instead she was shown something entirely different. And
oh, no.
I wrote a little script if you want to read it with me, or I can just be both characters. It's up to you.
Yes.
Do you want to be...
1,000 times
Can
yes.
you be Linda?
Hell yeah.
Okay, I'm going to send you the script, and we're going to read it out.
Oh, God.
We're going to do a scene.
Oh, God, okay. I hear you have what I want.
And what exactly do you want, ma'am?
I want the truth. Nothing but the cold, hard, throbbing facts.
You want to know the truth? The truth is, I may not be the one behind those cattle mutilations, but I would tear up your beef curtains in a second.
Michael! Oh, Richard!
Please, call me Dick.
And then Michael wants me to read, oh, Dick, 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 with exclamation marks, which I'm not going to do. Is this some kind of weird fetish of yours? This is not relevant to the episode at all.
Okay. So that's not exactly how it went. But I told you, as soon as a female character showed up, we get to the sex scene. And I'm practicing my disinformation skills, so, you know.
You absolute freak. You're a menace.
So they did meet up, and it was not at a hotel. I think it was at an Air Force base. It was a special room, but according to Doty, he said it was a commander's office, but it wasn't a commander's office. As he's going through this, he's kind of like, almost like proud of what he's saying. Like he's proud of his deceit.
Mm-hmm.
And my imagination just kind of took over from there.
Yeah, we noticed.
Why don't I give you something a little bit more wholesome to read, and we can hear from Linda herself what happened in the room.
Richard Doty said to me, the documentary that you did broadsided the government. Nobody ever expected a credible journalist would take on the animal mutilation story. I thought, what is going on here? He never gave me a list of names and phone numbers. Instead, he said, my superiors asked me to show you something. He handed me an envelope, pulled out these pages, and as he's handing them to me, he says, "You can read these, but you cannot take notes or ask me questions." And I'm looking at the top of the page in all caps, and it says, "Debriefing papers for the President of the United States of America on unidentified aerial vehicles." And I'm trying to read what is the most remarkable series of words that probably has ever been handed to me. It started out about all these places that the government of the United States have retrieved crashed discs. I knew some names like Roswell, but there was also Aztec, Magdalena, south of Laredo, down in Arizona. My mind was kind of reeling at how many places this is. Saying because all of us had only heard of Roswell. Then I came to the paragraphs that are probably the ones most worth sharing that said, extraterrestrials manipulated DNA in already evolving primates to create Homo sapiens. I remember reading that sentence over several times, trying to absorb the implication of its meaning, because if we are a genetically constructed species by extraterrestrials, we are then by definition a planet of 7 billion androids. And if we are androids, what purpose are we serving? Then, on the last page in all caps, all questions and mysteries about the evolution of Homo sapiens on this planet have been answered and is closed. What? Wait, what? How did we get to androids here?
What a bomb to drop.
We're androids?
Right. So basically, the document is claiming that we're genetically created by extraterrestrials for a certain purpose, but the purpose isn't really disclosed. That's what the documents are apparently saying.
We are replica? That's fucked up.
So according to Richard Doty, he confirms this. He delivered exactly what he was told to deliver to her, and he realizes that some of the information was real, although he doesn't specify.
Okay. Right, I'm just looking over this again. Some of it is real, and some of it isn't. So what could be real in here, and what could not be real? Maybe the real thing is the discs?
Right, it's all pretty explosive. Who knows, right? But it's important to note that all the information in those documents, much like all the information that was given to Benowitz and more, this is all stuff that provided the foundations of the UFO mythos, which includes, an expanded Roswell story, MJ-12, underground alien bases. Like, this is all stuff that I remember reading about, like, when I was a kid. So if their goal was to get this information out there, they succeeded because it is the foundations of the modern UFO myth.
Are you part of this operation?
Yeah, I guess I'm spreading it too, right?
Yeah, because I'm like, I've never heard this until you've sat here and told me and every DSR listener about it. So I think you're part of the operation, Michael.
Well, I'm glad to be bringing new content that your listeners aren't aware of. But I promise I've been trained in psychological tricks to make you all trust me.
I believe you, actually, because you found me.
Did I find you? I don't actually remember.
You found me. You did.
Oh, that's cool.
Like,
you did. Calling it now.
We didn't remember before, but like recently it came to me that you found me. So
I like the way you say that. You're so mistrustful now.
I am, actually, after this story. Like, before I was just like, oh yeah, how wholesome. Now I'm like, wait a minute. Who are you?
Well, we know that the men in black were coming after me, so I don't know. Who am I really? So afterwards, Linda did what no one else did at the time, and she actually went public with the fact that she was being lied to by OSI and specifically named Richard Doty. And in Doty's words, they got their revenge on her by, quote, planning something that she ran with that wasn't factual. And I think she realized that maybe she should keep her mouth shut.
Oh,
That's actually very interesting because Linda Moulton Howe is actually, or at least was, a very respected investigative journalist. She was mainstream, and then she got into this, and, and she does really good work, but there's been some things that she ran with that were highly criticized. And now we got Richard Doty confirming that that was him.
He's just ruining people left, right, and center.
So today, Rick Doty's retired. He no longer works for OSI, nor is he a disinformation agent. And a lot of this information that we learned today has come from him post-retirement. So since retiring, he's made multiple public appearances and interviews. And I thought it'd be interesting to have a brief look at some of the other claims that he's made since retiring.
Okay.
So, for example, this is kind of a bomb to drop, but according to Richard Doty, he was briefed at Area 51 on how his job was to use the UFO myth as a cover for top secret technology. But according to him, he was also briefed on how the UFO myth is not a myth at all. And he states that the government military was in possession of not only alien craft, but alien bodies as well. So, according to Richard Doty, he was trained on how to lie to people that come across top secret technology and tell them they were UFOs, but also how to lie to UFO witnesses and tell them that it's top secret technology. So this is where things get really blurred. Like, what is what? He's saying both things are simultaneously true.
Huh.
You know?
Wait, so what if he just retired and he was kind of like bored?
I miss my old exciting life.
Yeah, and he was like, well, I'm not part of projects anymore. Maybe I could just make up some stuff and get some attention. And those UFO people look quite fun. Maybe he was just like, I could make up a bunch of bullshit. You know, like a professional compulsive liar. Like, I know a couple of those.
Right, or like, that does someone like him ever actually retire, right? So here are some other things that he said. He said, most alien autopsy videos are fake, but there is one that he has seen that was captured at Area 51 that's never been released.
How convenient.
Yeah, there's also an authentic alien interrogation video that made its way online very briefly, but was pulled down. Now, we know that anything that goes online is permanent. Like,
yeah, come
if
on.
it's out there, it's out there.
Nice try,
But
old
apparently
head.
it was taken down. And this one's kind of a big one. He says he doesn't believe the disinformation jobs done by him and others like him were done right. And that's why he's speaking freely about it now. So
What?
basically, to rephrase that, he's saying that he feels a certain amount of guilt about what his job was. And he doesn't believe that the orders that he was given were ethical. Or at the very least, he says it should have been done differently.
He's like, I feel a little bit guilty about being a professional mind fricker for the government. In my old age, I've developed some empathy.
So to recap, a man whose job was to lie about UFOs, make up stories, and feed them to the UFO community is now retired and is saying that there are UFOs and alien bodies and crash saucers, and that the truth is very similar to the lies he used to spread. Is there any reason to believe anything this guy says now?
No, he's delusional. It's kind of like, you know, like rebelling against your parents. Like, he's like, I had to lie about this. Now that I'm free and retired, I'm going to lie about that.
Yeah, and then there's so many things. Like, one of the things that I caught, because I had to pour through so many interviews and just read so many articles, and I would catch inconsistent details with him. So, according to Doty, Paul Benowitz saw a crash saucer. And in the same series of interviews, he claims that one, it was like death drones that crashed.
Mm-hmm.
But later on, he claims that they set up props to specifically look like an alien crash. And then in a later interview, he talks about different UFO crash sites where real UFOs have actually crashed. And one of the places he names is Monsanto Mountain. So we got 3 different stories about one thing.
Yeah, in the true crime world, when a story changes constantly, it's because it's a complete lie. So I'm going to go with he's just lying through his teeth for, I don't know, like attention?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't know if it would be for attention. Like, according to him and everyone else, you know, in the UFO community, anyone that comes forward, you know, they're not making that much money off of it. So, And I can believe that, my instinct is that when you work for the government as a special agent handling sensitive information, and especially when, your job is to spread disinformation, I don't think you ever actually get out of that. You may
Yeah.
be off the payroll, but I think you're constantly being watched. You want to continue to act in the best interests of your employers. So
Yeah.
that's where it gets fuzzy for me.
I feel like lying was his life and he just loved it. He couldn't stop.
He's like,
He's
oh,
like, this is my identity.
he'd be at the bar being like, oh, you wouldn't believe some of the lies I made up. Oh, there were some good ones. I made
You know,
this.
when he gets drunk, he tells the truth. He's like,
Yeah, I made
nothing
this
is
one
real.
guy. He was a painter, man. We put these masks on these chicks, and they would have sex together. And we told them they were aliens, and it was just literal masks on naked chicks. There was nothing real about it, but he just painted it. It was amazing.
If no one got that reference, it's the David Huggins episode. Please listen to it.
So I feel like this is a really good time for this episode because of what's happening in UFO news recently. Like we have whistleblowers coming forward, in like David Grush.
Do we?
Yeah, if you haven't heard the news, David Grush, who is no, I can't remember his official title, but he is a very high-ranking military official who has come forward. There has been some changes in the legislation to basically protect any whistleblowers that come forward with information about UFOs so that they can tell
Ooh.
Congress what's going on. So David Grush is the first to come forward, and he dropped some bombs like similar to what Richard Doty's saying. They have alien craft, they have alien bodies, all this mind-blowing things. Now, I'm not publicly saying that David Grush is a disinformation agent, and in fact, if you've been keeping up with George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell, apparently they've been in contact for months, and they really had to look into his background, and they really believe that he believes what he's saying. But I just want to point out, because I think a lot of stuff is going to come out, that the government and the military is actively spreading lies about UFOs. Not that they don't exist, but that they do exist, that they have bodies, and like maybe it's lies, maybe it's not, but they're purposely muddying the waters. And so I think moving forward, because we're going to get so many official sources coming forward, we're going to have to be more skeptical than we've ever been.
There is no way that we could, like, after this story that you've just told me, there is no way that we could look at anything and make sense of it, because there's just so much chaos, which is a great way to sort of muddy the waters, as you would say. The fact that this is just confusing. Now I don't know what to believe, Michael. Thank you. I thought I knew. I thought I was like firm in my beliefs, and now I've heard this and I'm like, everything is bullshit. Everything is lies. It's just throwing as much chaos out there as you can.
It really is.
So it takes people so long to like wade through it and sort it out that when they eventually do, everyone's just had enough of it. And I think that's what they're probably banking on.
The one comforting thing about this all is that the governments are so fragmented. You know, you have your military industrial complex, you have your politicians, and you have all these secret black ops happening where it's basically one hand does, the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. Nobody knows what's going on. So that's why you have situations like this where, the government is asking for the government to come forward and with UFO information. There's declassified CIA documents talking about encounters with men in black, people posing as CIA agents and being like, they're not ours. Who are they? Right. So there's so many different groups of people within what we call government that want different things, that know different things. And I think for some reason right now, there's finally an official public effort to look into what is actually really going on. And I don't know if that was planned, because the thing is, if you look back to like the the leaked Tic Tac, like the Navy UFO videos,
Yeah.
that was not officially released. That was leaked video. So it sparked this official dive into this, but it wasn't planned. Like the government's hand was forced.
Maybe it was, Michael.
Maybe it was, yeah.
That's the disinformation aspect of it.
All right, I will say one more thing, and I'm not saying that I endorse this idea, but there is a huge group of people that believe in a conspiracy theory called Project Bluebeam.
Uh-huh.
And now I don't know if Project Bluebeam itself might actually be a real operation. My understanding is that it is. Project Bluebeam is the idea of using holographic images for psychological warfare. And so there's a whole group of people that believe that the end game is that the government will stage a fake alien invasion.
No, stop.
To basically push all these policies, much like the same way that the war on terror was fought and there were no weapons of mass destruction, but all these laws and things changed that basically took away people's freedoms.
Michael,
the belief is
I
that
have enough
there's
things to
going to be
worry
a
about.
fake alien invasion.
I'm trying to...
So if I was a disinformation agent, I wouldn't tell you that, would I?
I know I have enough things to worry about. And now I'm thinking about this.
So, not saying that's true or not, but my general attitude with all the information about UFOs is just to kind of accept it all, but not believe any of it.
Okay.
You know what would be so weird is that if that was true, that the government is planning on doing a fake alien invasion, but then the real aliens show up, and then it's like this weird intergalactic war, and there's aliens and humans on one side, and reptilians and other humans on the other side.
And Michael Jackson. And ABBA. And other... the gorillas.
It's interesting because I used the word endgame a few times, but maybe it will be like the movie Endgame, where it's like, oh, all the characters are showing up. David Bowie's back. He's fighting too. You know?
It's just Roblox.
I like that this episode has been so confusing and traumatizing to both of us that now we're just in literal hysterics.
You know what? I think this is like something... Like, usually it's me and Chris going... And then the aliens came down and it was a man in a mask. But like, this one is kind of like question reality. I think people are going to be left with like, because you know what's really funny? Bookending this episode is Hulk Hogan part 1 and Hulk Hogan part 2.
What you gonna do?
So exactly. So in between episodes on Hulk Hogan, we just have this like existential crisis, question everything.
There you go.
Is real.
Hulk Hogan has always been the sugar that helps medicine go down. Am I right?
Hulk Hogan, is he real? Who knows?
His hot dog skin suggests he's not human.
Pastamania was implanted as a prop to distract everybody. Thank you so much, Michael, for making me laugh and screwing up my brain.
You know how I do.
But yeah, Michael and I also have another episode that we've been trying to work on, but it involves a lot of practical exercises.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking about, don't you? That's not as bad as it sounds.
Oh, Dick!
Oh, God. I'm going to have to rephrase that. But yes, we're trying to do something, like, kind of fun. And we're going to get Chris in. Oh, God, it's just sounding
We put out a Craigslist
I'm gonna
ad.
shut up.
We're hoping more people can join.
Shut up! Right, I'm going to shut up there. But we do have something else in the works that is kind of hilarious and hasn't been working so far.
That's why it's hilarious.
But, you know, Michael has problems. Okay, thank you so much, Michael, and everybody. Actually, do you want to share all of your socials so people can...
Yeah, you can find me. I live on Instagram, so that's just at Septembryo. You can also find me on Facebook, facebook.com/Septembryo. I'm on all your favorite streaming sites, so you can listen to my music there. And I guess I'm on Threads now. We'll see how that goes. But that's it.
Me too, but I only posted one thing.
It is refreshing failing on a new social media site. There's no hashtags. How do you
Yeah, I mean,
find
I don't
people?
get it. I don't know. I don't get it. I just posted like the DSR like website where people can listen on browser,
Well,
and then I
my
was
work
like,
is done.
okay, I've got nothing else to say.
Before we wrap up today's episode, I had something special that I wanted to share with you guys. And no, it's not the collection of online dating profiles I made for my cats. I actually got to sit down with a good friend of mine, Alan Smith from the Mystic Lounge podcast in New York, who actually got to interview Rick Doty himself. And I thought it'd be a very interesting thing to interview Alan about his experiences and general impressions that he got from Rick Doty for the hour and a half that they spoke. And you might be surprised about what he has to say. Check it out. Alan, you interviewed Rick Doty about a year ago. What was your general impression having spoken with him for over an hour?
My general impression is he's telling the truth that he was giving a disinformation campaign to Paul Benowitz and others, it appears, that he was following orders, that some of that was off the books because the FOIA documents don't support some of the things that he said he did, and that he is not a totally inhumane person. I think that he truly has remorse for what happened to Paul Benowitz, and I think he can't believe be 100% blamed for Paul's breakdown. Paul was given information just like many of us regarding high mythological conspiracies. And most of us don't end up in a psychological, ward of some sort, or have some kind of breakdown. So I think that there's some underlying things going on there, perhaps. Again, I'm not a psychiatrist, with Paul, and that this only contributed to that that breakdown. I'm just trying to give Rick a bone and just have a little compassion on his side, because I think that he was following orders, and I think that he does feel bad. In fact, he, and it's hard to say what's real and not real, but Rick did say he tried talking to Paul several times while he was in this condition of paranoia that there's an alien invasion coming, and much of which was based on information that Rick gave him. But Rick tried talking to him and said, look, I would lie to you. I'm sorry I lied to you. And that still didn't help. So Paul had already gone past this threshold, whatever it was. So my overall impression, unethical. Yes, laws are probably broken. But I think that the overly demonization of Rick is not a fair one.
Right.
Yeah.
So like in general, he was following orders, he was doing his job, but he does have real remorse about the things that have happened. And he's not this cold, callous, professional liar that many people paint him out to be.
No, and I've seen the interviews over the years. Obviously we've read articles. When I was interviewing him and I asked him about this, his emotional reaction to me did seem very sincere.
Interesting. Which
not something a pure sociopath could pull off.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Which is interesting, because it kind of brings me into my next question. So many who have met Rick, like yourself, have been quoted as saying he does seem like an honest and sincere person. However, Rick Doty himself has explained that he was trained on how to manipulate people into trusting him in order to get information from him. While you were interviewing him, did you ever get the impression that he was employing any sort of these techniques on you, or did it seem completely genuine the entire time?
It seemed, I can't say it was 100% genuine, only because he has to be careful about what he says, right? Like there's certain information he's willing to tell and other information he's not willing to give out. So overall, I felt like he was pretty consistent and pretty straightforward. Because I asked him, the EBE, the film, the 35 millimeter film he was shown of alleged gray alien, claiming that it likes strawberry ice cream, Tibetan music, and had all these kind of weird details. He says that even when he first saw it, that he didn't think that was real. He thought that the Air Force was, playing some kind of counterintelligence game on him for a moment, but then he came to believe it. I don't know if that's true. Like,
Right.
I can't take his word for that. And whether he was or was not shown that film of a captured gray alien, he can't even validate it either way, and he was unsure himself. So it's all kind of just like up in the air.
That's right.
But all those stories did create a lot of researchers to take it seriously and write books and speak about it at conferences and really perpetuate these theories throughout the ufology and the community. So as far as like, if that was the counterintelligence intent, they were really successful.
Oh, exactly. That was one of the things I wanted to ask you, was if Rick Doty's primary function as an OSI agent was to muddy the waters in the UFO conversation, would it even be necessary to debrief him on the actual truth?
Yeah, I mean, he would only know so much information.
Right.
There's plenty of people who have come out of the military and they talk about things being compartmentalized. Even if you're working on let's say a top secret program for a private company, there may be only certain aspects of that developed technology that you are aware of. And that's pretty normal. It makes sense to me. So why not be the same within the intelligence community? I think the most important thing, if we can just step back, because there's so much that we don't know and don't know what to believe, is if Rick is telling the truth about the hoaxed documents that was given to Paul, the apparently like beamed audio messages that Paul was picking up on his computer and that sort of stuff, and lying to senators, like Rick Doty lying to senators in New Mexico, these are illegal things. If those are true, it hasn't been investigated, right?
That's right.
And if it's not investigated, then to my mind, that means it probably was true. Because if Rick was AWOL, if Rick was operating outside of the Air Force Office of Special Investigations and doing these things illegally, then the Air Force Office of Special Investigations could just investigate it, find Rick guilty, and,
that's right,
and prosecute. And they haven't.
That's right. That shows that there were orders that were given, and they wouldn't need an investigation because they know where it leads.
Yes, and I think there's probably a certain amount of loyalty that goes on there, right? So it wasn't just Rick. There were other people involved, and you don't want to take the whole crew down, right? Because if you come after Rick, then maybe Rick will start naming names and bringing other people with him. So you just ignore it, and that's pretty much what they've done. They've ignored it. I mean, the only documents from FOIA requests that I'm familiar with state that they looked at Paul Benowitz's data and they decided not to investigate. That's what's on the books.
That's interesting. It's a very good point. These two things kind of tie together. I'm curious to hear your take on it. There's the general consensus that, if you're a secret spy, or a double agent, like these kinds of people, they never retire. So can we trust what Rick Doty is telling us now, do you think? And if so, does that mean that he genuinely believes most of what he's saying?
I think that he genuinely believes most of what he's saying. And I think that the point is he's sharing what he knows he can share. Because at this point, sharing that he was a disinformation officer, then it undercuts all the intent of the disinformation. Because now we go back and we look at Bill Moore and other people who were kind of a part of that disinformation campaign. I mean, William Moore came out and said it at a 1989 MUFON conference. He admitted, I was involved in this. I thought I was going to be helpful, but I have to come clean. And so the fact that Doty is saying, yeah, this was disinformation campaign, then that causes everybody to go, oh, so how do we know what to trust anymore? That actually muddies the water, I think, even further than the original intent. because now ufologists can go, they can have a choice. They can go, I can believe this or I can believe that. And I can still take my time researching this road, this line of an inquiry, because now Rick has opened the gate. Like, so if the intent was to muddy the water initially, right, to detract people from, top secret programs, now more people are looking into top secret programs than they were before because of this, because what Rick has said. So I think that he's probably being mostly truthful. Yeah.
Yeah. That's an interesting point, because the one thing I was looking at that I wanted to get your opinion on is, Rick Doty has mentioned that he was debriefed both on how to cover up stories of top secret military technology with UFO stories, but also debriefed on UFO information and how to cover it up with stories of top secret military technology. And so anyone who saw a UFO, he would be telling them it's top secret military technology. Yeah. Anyone who saw something top secret, he would tell them it's a UFO. And I'm sure the question on everyone's mind is, what is the benefit of doing this if both truths are basically put out there for everyone to hear? Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, it's a layered cake. So I think that they want some people to get lost in the more colorful, out there stories about extraterrestrials having bases underground and secret deals with aliens and that sort of thing, and kind of get lost in that world, and not spend time looking at top secret hardware or and so that eliminates a whole swath of other people. And then people who might firstly be interested in just what's going on with top secret programs for craft and aerial vehicles or space vehicles, they might be a little distracted by the UFO thing too. So spending a little less time on that because they're spending a little bit more time on the UFO thing. So it's confusing.
Yeah, it's basically identifying what are you interested in, so that those people who are looking for UFOs are diverted elsewhere, and those people who might be looking for top secret technology will only find UFOs, and neither is getting what they want, I guess.
Yeah, but I think what they didn't expect is they didn't see the internet age coming in the way that it has. They didn't know that. In 1980, they had no idea. So even if there was movies like Tron coming out and that kind of thing, but how the sociological impact, how we utilize the internet and social media like we do today, and podcasts and YouTube, they had no idea. So all that effort is basically for naught, because information is so easily. We don't rely on a Bill Moore to write a book anymore.
That's right.
Right. Like, we've got hundreds of people that are posting about this online, doing their own interviews, doing their own research. And so it makes it easier to, as long as we employ our critical thinking, it makes it easier, I think, to kind of start looking at things and going, nah, I don't know, that looks like BS. That looks pretty good in real time. So I don't know. I think all that effort, it served a purpose for its time. And I think we're just in a different era. So I think it doesn't matter at this point as far as moving forward in ufology and disclosure. However, I am really curious, and you've kind of got me thinking about this, Michael. I'm going to message Rick after this interview. I'm really curious about having him back on and asking him from his perspective what this modern age of disclosure, the UAP task force and Arrow is up to.
That would be interesting. I would
because I'm seeing some parallels here with potential disinformation. Even though I'm leaning much more towards, we probably are tiptoeing towards disclosure. I've never been all that optimistic about it until now. But because I'm more optimistic, I really want to hear from someone who would know better than I would.
Right. And that brings me into another question I wanted to ask you is if we know that the government and the military was purposely putting out disinformation about UFOs in this age of disclosure, which, you know, you can argue that this wasn't a volunteered thing. They were kind of, their hand was forced. Can we trust what the official word on UFOs is coming out moving forward if we know that there is an official history of misinforming the public?
That's the problem with Rick Doty. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
So I think that you can only just try to do your best, you know, to discern what is truthful and just and try to corroborate, try to cross-examine and confirm the information and making your own mind. I think like Stephen Bassett, who was on Coffee and UFOs recently, was talking about, he's like, we kind of need to take the Rwanda approach. Like after the Rwanda Civil War, it was like, are we going to spend the rest of our time just now arguing who is at fault and who is to blame and who to arrest and blah, 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 blah. Or are we going to try to move forward and come together and look towards the future? And I think someone like Richard Dolan would probably disagree with that. I think I heard him say that recently because you have to hold the government accountable.
Yes.
So I think that both things have to be true. So I think we've got the historians, the researchers, investigators need to look at what the government has done in the past and say, hey, you know, you need to be held accountable. If nothing else, come clean, right? Just come clean and tell us what you did and admit it. You know, it was unethical. You don't have to admit it was illegal if you don't want to, right? If you don't want to go down that road, let the NCAA, you know, anyone else like take on that, whether it was against people's civil rights.
It's kind of like a personal relationship, right? It's like the people's relationship to the government is very much like from person to person. Is if one person has a history of, you know, lying, the only thing they can do to possibly repair it is own up to it, express remorse, and then move on with a genuine intent to be truthful.
Yeah, I mean, have the congressional hearings, bring those people that are still alive, that initiated those programs, if they are even still alive, right, or enacted in some way that was illegal, bring them forward, and you know, you can build a case in a way that's saying that it, you know, they were well intended, but if indeed someone was giving orders and it harmed anyone directly, then they should be arrested. They should be tried. Like no doubt about it. So that's true, but also we have to like look and move forward. We can't get stuck in going, oh my God, I can't trust anything ever again. We have to move forward. So that's where I am with Rick too. It's like there's all this information, you know, how much of it is true, how much isn't. You know, we'll do our best, but don't get caught up on now. I can't believe anything that anyone ever tells me. I think that's just an easy way out rather than
that's
just
also
doing
the design of the misinformation too. That's the effect, the desired effect of it. Here's an interesting one that I'm really curious to see if you've spotted anything. I've combed through countless Richard Doty interviews, and if you go through it enough, you know, you start to find some contradictions. One that stood out to me was in the documentary film Mirage Man, he's quoted as saying that they flew Paul Benowitz over Mount Manzano and set up props to mimic a UFO crash.
Right.
And in your interview, he was quoted as when he was on another topic. He wasn't speaking about Paul at this time. He was just listing different sites of UFO crashes. And in one of those sites he named was Mount Manzano, which is an apparent contradiction. Now, both could be simultaneously true. As you said, if you want to lie really well, you got to use as much as the truth. But what I want to know was, in your speaking with him, was there any other apparent contradictions that you spotted, or anything he said that didn't come across as exactly credible?
You know, I think that there was a little bit about Bill Moore's situation that I felt like there was a little bit of a lack of confidence in his speaking about Bill Moore. I feel because there was a time where he was saying, "Oh, I had nothing to do with it," Not really. It wasn't. It didn't. That wasn't a command on my end. I was ended up being a liaison or something like that. But I think there was more. I think he was probably more involved with Bill Moore than he's letting on.
Interesting. All right. Lastly, what would you say were the main benefits and conclusions that you walked away with after speaking with Rick Doty?
I feel that this is someone who still thinks they're doing the right thing.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Alan.
Yeah.
This is really good getting your perspective on this. Can you tell the people listening where they might find you and support you?
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate that. So you can find me at youtube.com/Mystic Lounge. That's where Coffee and UFOs podcast is, and the Mystic Lounge podcast. And then on Instagram at paranormal_now, on Twitter as well. And that's where you can find me. On Facebook too, but mostly on Instagram or Twitter.
Same. We all live on Instagram.
We do.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alan.
Oh, thank you, brother. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Michael. And do you want to tell everybody about the song that we're going to play out to?
Yeah, let's play the one that you requested. It's called VHS Violent Horror Stories, and I basically wrote it after binge watching a bunch of 80s horror films. And so it's this 80s pop rock song all about 80s slasher flicks, and it was super fun. So I hope you guys like it.
Yep, but it's in my top 3 Septembryo songs. Sweet. So here we go. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Dark makes hearts beat faster. Jump scares and nervous laughter. Safe and sound inside your home. What's that sound inside your home? This chick picks flicks that thrill her. Your fix of quick slick killers. Safe and sound inside your home. What's that